A very good evening, folks, and welcome all of you once again to the In Conversation with the Borderlands. Today, it is almost a historic day, or rather, we are one day behind the historic day because in the neighborhood in Nepal, a lot of things have happened. The way things have evolved in the last 2 days, it looks like it's been a decade of events, and there's so much going on that sometimes it looks like we don't know where we are. Uh, it Sometimes we feel what started was right, what started was against a particular kind of a system that nobody was happy with. But then how things flipped and what we saw yesterday brought us a lot of depression and dejection. People that were supporting the movement on day one were also speaking about the kind of images that we got to see yesterday, the different kinds of videos that were floating around in the social media of houses of ministers being burned, of really targeted, attacks on people, individuals, and also of the political community as such. Those videos really did not go down well, I think, with a lot of people, including the Gen Z that led the protest on the 8th of September. A lot of them were also unhappy. So we really don't know. Right now, we're not saying this is right or that is wrong, but we're just saying that this is how, or these are the things that unfolded in front of our eyes, and we're just looking at it just like that. So to take this discussion about all the events that have been unfolded in Nepal in the last 2 days, we have put together a wonderful panel, I'll say, a panel which is a mix, a young panel of an intentionally young panel of people that are neither really Gen Z or they are not really quote unquote the old Nepal, or let's say, what that's the, I guess, the some of the jargon, some of the wordings that go around: the old Nepal, the new Nepal, the Naya Nepal, and the Purano Nepal, right? So we've put together a group of people here who are who have seen the old Nepal. They've been born in that particular year, from where they've actually seen a lot of different kinds of transition, and they've also seen the Gen Z rise. The panel I have with me are really diverse, and I'm thankful to all of you for joining us. We have an agricultural economist and environmentalist who works with indigenous communities, Mr. Lakshman Gurung. We have Mr. Binayak Sundas, who's a professor in the North Bengal University. Binayak is an expert on strategic affairs, is an expert on defense studies. Binayak also takes a lot of interest on the political, let's say, events in Nepal. And I have been learning a lot from Binayak from the time we've met. It's been about almost, I think, 2 years since we've known each other. We also have Aditya Thapa, who's another professor at the North Bengal University. Aditya is also a great friend that I have known for some time now. Recently, we traveled together to Bhutan, again, the neighborhood, to really understand our cultural linkages, what is in the neighborhood. And today, when Nepal is burning, I could but not help call Aditya to this panel to share his thoughts on Nepal. From Kathmandu, I had introduced Mr. Lakshman Gurung. We have a very close friend, Pushpa Podal, who is a development practitioner, and she's worked on governance. And I have followed some of her work, so looking forward to really listening to her because she has been in the thick of things, and I know they are all going through a trauma themselves. But it'll be really great to therefore hear from them on what they think is happening around them. Like her, there is Dovan Rai, who at a very short notice agreed to join us. Thank you, ma'am, for joining us. She's a computer scientist, deals with AI, deals with a lot of that stuff, works with body and data, if I'm not mistaken, right now. And she, I think, is a person that we need to really talk about because the trigger was the ban on the social media, and uh, and then we saw how things really unfolded. We also have another a, a great person of I've been hearing about. We've not met before. The first time we're meeting is Mr. Ram Tiwari, an advocate. Uh, he works on various issues when it comes to, I think, the legal protective mechanisms uh, within Nepal. And we'll get to hear from him. He probably will also like to share a legal perspective on the kind of development that we've seen in the last 2 days in Kathmandu and beyond. And then we have a friend who is associated with the borderlands, Mr. Akhilesh Tripathi, who's a very senior journalist. He has been associated with several media groups in Nepal. Currently, he's freelancing, independent, and writing for the borderlands. And we've seen how the Kantipur office was burnt. So I'm sure you'll have a lot to also share with us. Ram Tiwari ji. If you could kindly take us through the last 2 days, are we looking at what is being sort of coined as trying to create a Naya Nepal by destroying the Purano Nepal or the old Nepal? And if that is the case, what we saw on the 8th and what we saw on the 9th were two different really situations. And that has brought us to this kind of gathering, or rather, there've been a lot of gatherings like this, where the one question people are asking is what really happened.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all. I'm still thinking on why this happened and what is going to unfold. But what apparently looks like is that what happened on the 8th and 9th have similar reasons. And the reasons are frustrations. Again, a very centralized political leadership, um, failure in delivery when it comes to people's expectations, even after years of being a federal country. So this is a widespread frustration. One, it was with our generation, and hence, that was why many people showed up on the streets, and the state didn't want to see that happening, wanted to um, counter that with very repressive measures. So we had a very sad number of deaths. It's very often cited in Nepal that this many number of casualties didn't even happen within the 19 days of movement we had in 2007. The second people's movement we had for 19 days, even those uh, those many days didn't have these many casualties, let alone the destruction of physical infrastructures and so on. So it is, I would say, a result of widespread frustration, one with the generation, and then with general public, especially who were looking for lawlessness and trying to carry on that uh, lack of rule of law. But what I find so important, even even in this post incident moment, is we've completely forgotten those who have been killed. So that whole narrative is sidelined, that whole story is sidelined. Coming from a very justice perspective, we don't know what's happening with their families, especially those who were killed, were even minors. That is how quickly, the 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 changes have happened, and how quickly our memories have swept through many things. That's how I would like to put. But as many of our colleagues from Nepal would also attest. This was certainly because of the trigger from the ban on social media, but it was actually portrayed as a movement against corruption. The Nepo kids was a big, I would say, uh, influence that we had seen in Indonesia and the Philippines and so on. So it had multiple factors, but the consequences were so deep, so long lasting, And very importantly, again, what we are missing in what is happening to the families of people who were killed. So more
Yeah,
than 20 and hundreds of people were injured.
I would just like to ask you again here. You've just actually brought up something very interesting, and I have been personally thinking about this, that in all of this, the 20 people who were killed and the 500 plus people who are injured, we've suddenly forgot about them, or forgotten about them rather, uh, for what happened yesterday. So what really happened yesterday could be, sometimes held responsible, or people that, I mean, the kind of vandalism, the kind of sort of madness that we saw on the streets of Nepal yesterday, that actually could be held accountable for even forgetting what happened on day one, which was very important. And like you've mentioned, the trauma, the families, whatever they're going through, these children, a minor was killed. So, what do you think, if you could just firstly briefly tell us, and we'll come back to this, but what do you think could have gone wrong? And do you think, therefore, this is one reason why day one has been almost forgotten?
Well, I still believe that the reasons are comparable, which is that on day one, the state didn't heed people's concerns, and day two, the state wasn't present. So, which shows that the state doesn't work as per people's voice or concerns. So, there were many calls for even the military to step in, especially for the protection of this property, but the military also didn't step in. Many of the police stations were deserted. So, everybody could go inside a police station, grab arms, and do whatever they want. Or very simplistic, but you can rebuild these buildings, right? You can always rebuild this. But can we rebuild any single life? We can't. And more than that, it was a killing, it was a murder of hopes, it was a massacre of hopes.
It was a murder of hopes, it was a massacre, and you've said we can rebuild the buildings. Some people would say, but why even attack the buildings? But yes, you have a point. Binayak Sundas, Professor Binayak Sundas, if you are there, if I could come to you from what you've heard from Ram Tiwari ji, he's just mentioned a few things. So, Binayak, from what you've
Yes.
heard Mr. Ram Tiwari say, that this was a massacre, this was, the destruction of hopes. He said buildings could be rebuilt. The 20 people are almost forgotten. These are also hard truths that we need to factor in. While at the same time, I'm again saying that we have to also remember what happened yesterday. For what happened yesterday, I think again takes us back to day one, and why day one is almost erased from our memory, at least for the time being, right? And we are looking at the future almost. So we are looking at a future, and we are looking at yesterday for all the images that we got to saw what happened on the streets of Nepal. You can just tell us on, in terms of your thoughts, looking at it from the outside.
First of all, let me just say namaste to all my co-panelists. आशा राख्छु तपाईँहरू सबै सन्चै हुनुहुन्छ होला अनि माफी पनि माग्छु किनभने to speak on such an issue. I'm sorry I went on Nepali for a bit. But I also apologize because for I think, and I speak on behalf of Advitya as well, that for us to speak on this issue without actually being there or having faced what you all have faced might seem a little sort of not unethical, but a little insensitive. I hope you do not take it that way. We are only giving you the perspective that we see as people who follow the politics and the history of Nepal and Nepal in general from the Center for Himalayan Studies. Sir, I think from the outside, whatever Tiwari sir said, I think that kind of sums up whatever whatever we've been following about Nepal for quite some time. The surprise really was that a movement of this magnitude actually took so long to happen. You could almost feel that something was happening. There was already a need for change. There was already, the structural. If you look at, how every movement, or especially student-based movements, happen. Lack of opportunities, corruption, and then of course the opulence of the elite. And then, one thing that you haven't seen in this is ethnicity and caste. And it's so easily sort of, it's so easy to sort of even imagine a future where these issues will also start coming up. But for the time being, we hadn't seen. There was ample opportunity for I think the sort of the recipe for disaster was already there. And the government decides to do one of the most stupid things that you could possibly do, which is put a ban on social media. That actually shows what Tiwariji was saying, that there's an absolute disconnect of the political elites, even from their own cadre base. I mean, if you think about it, the lack of a cadre base for both the parties was also expressed in the manner in which they could not handle the situation. You wouldn't see these kind of situation taking place in India, in BJP-led states or even TMC-led states, where the cadre would already disperse the crowd. So that also showed that the elite have been so sort of, and that tends to happen, of course, in every sort of, political structure, where sometimes the elites get a little too comfortable with themselves, and then they ignore the rank and file, and then sort of this kind of disaster does take place. But the ban for me also showed how little the ruling elite actually understood the socio-economics of the people on the grassroots. It's exactly what I've written, that social media, it's not just social media, isn't it? I mean, that's why I think even the narrative building of it all was a little wrong as far as media. I mean, Indian media gets it wrong all the time, but even Western media got it wrong when they said people were protesting. I mean, that's not understanding the actual sort of the depth of which this ban would hurt, because social media is also a marketplace for a lot of these people, right? I mean, you have TikTokers, you have Instagrammers, you have YouTubers who are earning from this, right? And then you decide to take that away from them when you've already failed as a political leadership. So I think from the way I'm seeing this, it's fascinating to listen to Tiwariji, because these are the same hypotheses we were having. One thing, I mean, there's others who I would love to hear, but I don't know how my co-panelists would see this. But yesterday, I follow a lot of these TikTokers. Since Aditya and I teach a lot of these Gen Zs, we also try to remain Gen Z-ish. So we follow a lot of these Gen Z sort of influencers on YouTube and Instagram, etc. So I was following this girl known as Elena Don, really like her. And Elena Don put up a statement late at night, and she said that this is not Gen Z protest. You came, they saw, people are, and the only thing that came to my mind was what did you think would happen? Because revolutions never end where they begin.
True.
I mean, this is where I think Gen Z is getting to learn a little bit of the little sort of the millennial Gen X lessons, that once, leaderless movements are lovely to think about, but then the consequence, the day afters, are really difficult to deal with.
Can I, if I could just stop you there and ask you, just because you've mentioned this, do you think somewhere the Gen Z in Nepal were not better prepared? If I could use it, I may sound insensitive, but I am just trying to look at what happened in the other neighborhood, Bangladesh. I am trying to look at what happened in Indonesia. I'm trying to look at what happened in Sri Lanka. Do you think they could have been better prepared for, like you mentioned, the revolution? It doesn't end, and what happens, what's there in the immediate future? So do you think the Gen Zs were not better prepared, or the kind of preparation they sort of had for this protest was overtaken by the more, let's say, uh, the more, how should I, what term is there to use, the better planned people, the vested interests? Do you think they got into the picture and they sort of almost hijacked what was happening on the 8th of September on the streets of Kathmandu? Because we just saw the flip side of that yesterday, and like again I mentioned, there is a contrast. So why do you think, even if, like you've mentioned, political cadres, you've mentioned the lack of understanding of socioeconomics, all that is taken well. But I am talking about the Gen Z themselves. Where did they go wrong?
It's a very interesting thing that you should bring this up. It's very interesting that you should bring this up, because of the fact that if the point is well taken. Could they have been well prepared? But if you think about everything else, and I've been follow, but I wouldn't say I've been following social media, but we've been studying the social media of this, of how this entire event was getting represented on Instagram, etc., because that's another fascinating area of study. a lot of those short reels are based on one thing and one thing alone, which is the fact that this is a simultaneous uprising of the Gen Z. पहिला युवा भनिन्थ्यो, we used to call them the युवा. I think the more catchy word for the kids these days is Gen Z, because that tends to sort of stick with people, right? And what gives them the legitimacy among, what gives them the legitimacy is the romance of being people without leaders and people without flags, right? And this
The
is,
romance. I will also, sorry, I will just ask you to park your thoughts here. I will, because that will just take that to our other panelists. And please park your thoughts. We'll come back in this. The romance, romance of really going into this kind of a situation, leaderless, rudderless, and then not knowing what to do when we are actually hit by reality. That's when reality bites. Pushpa, you've been in the thick of things. You're also a person who has connections with the media. You write, and today you are again back into the media framework somewhat. You've been a development practitioner. You've seen a lot of this. You've worked on governance. Where did governance go wrong? And if I could add, where was civil society? If you really look at what happened on the 8th and the 9th yesterday, I don't see any civil society really. You can't call that civil society. And governance, because governance somewhere went wrong, we had people who had to come onto the streets. So please share your thoughts on these two aspects.
So, thank you. I'll call you Bidayak Z for now.
Please
So,
do that.
thank you so much. I've been watching this, like folding up, not only the event, the preparation for it, especially on TikTok, because other social media were banned, like Instagram and Facebook, and I didn't use VPN to like connect my social media. I'm a big consumer of social media, and I was on TikTok all the day and was going through all the short videos people, especially Gen Zs, were making, because I have a lot of Gen Z friends, and I try to learn from them very much, especially language and the way they think. And when I was I could observe that there was the word of the like use of the word romance. And it was really interesting to see how they picked up from the previous demonstration. For example, there were videos of this Gen Z circulating, like making about what dance they would do in the protest, or there is the storm called "Get Ready with Me," which influencer use. So there was "Get Ready with Me" to go to my life's first protest. Many of them were really excited, and they pick up some iconic moves from the previous demonstration that happened in Maitigar, and they watch it in the media, like teachers protest were happening and all those things, and they were picking a very like picky moves and things from that, and they were making like that. But what as you said, what I didn't saw was the involvement of civil society as such. In the present context, the definition and the working of civil society has definitely changed. I don't know what kind of change is this. I when I was working, especially close with civil society, there were like a generation of people who were trying to grab up what is happening and how the young people are seeing the civil movements and the things like that. But I could feel that there was kind of disconnection with the a younger generation to actually bring them as civil society, because the definition of civil society, or even I don't think the young people are using the term civil society itself. Like my previous panelists were saying, that there was a different kind of terminologies and things that they were using, like the word organized or organized protest or things like that. I didn't see many people even using the word organize. So the change in the language it was so visible, and I think the civil society, especially in Nepal, which is kind of used with a parallel like close with the NGOs, the non-government organization, though they are not only the ones, and about the progressive writers or the those people. I think this generation of people were trying to grasp what the younger people were thinking, and I think there was a big disconnect between
So,
them. And in
yeah,
terms of governance, like in terms of governance also, we from a development perspective, I would definitely look at it from what's the function of government and the things like that. But the young people, they especially their connection to governance, or what if we say government is by seeking the simple service, service civil sorry service, such as making their citizenship.
right.
And this is when they are actually connected with the actual government, I would say. And all those frustration, because Gen Zs are the generation who really express themselves well in their own language.
Right.
And
If I
all of
could,
this
yeah,
is
I'll just
sorry.
because you've mentioned something very interesting here, and I'm tempted to just come in, and I'm sorry for the interruption here. That
Yes.
Gen Zs express themselves in their own language, and to be very honest, I have Gen Zs around me, like Binayak said. They have, of course, their students. I also love youth, and I love the Gen Z, but I have not myself, I think, taken that much trouble or the initiative to understand these expressions. Sometimes I get very lost in their expressions. So there, do you think there the disconnect? I bring in civil society again here. This disconnect, it could be intentional, it could be unintentional for, the way, I mean, the kind of pace we have in life today, everybody is busy. The Gen Zs are busy with their life. We are busy with the millennials are busy with their life. Everybody is busy. So therefore, this disconnect, do you think somewhere so we're blaming if the blame game is already on, right? We're saying, okay, the political parties, the Binayak mentioned, I agree with him, the political cadre, that cadre system was not working. They could have done a lot to at least calm down the situation. The civil society seemed to be missing. There were some people that came out, I think, in the evening yesterday, and they were trying to stop people from ransacking, I think, the malls or the shops and stealing and all of that. There the civil society was gradually showing up. People started to realize, they're saying, no, no, we can't burn and burn down our buildings, our cultural heritages, because I think they went and attacked also some places in Bhaktapur and all of that. So this disconnect that you talk about in terms of the expressions, in terms of how the Gen Z functions, is, I think, very important. But we'll come back to that. I want to take the same question I want to take to Madam Dovan Rai. If you could tell us, you are a computer scientist, and the Gen Z today uses the computer, and we've all seen, and this is something that we cannot deny, although of course there are other more stronger reasons like corruption, nepotism, and all of that that led to this situation. But the social media ban in Nepal acted as a trigger. And today, the Gen Zs are totally, like Binayak, I think, mentioned some time back, if I'm not mistaken, or Tiwari ji, it's not just about using the social media for the heck of using social media, but their life revolves around that social media, right? So this expression that Pushpa spoke about, insofar as the Gen Zs are concerned, their language, their expression, their involvement with the social media, how do you think we should address this as a society? And are we losing out? For what happened in Nepal is only probably the tip of the iceberg. Probably these things are happening in other societies, and soon, God forbid, we don't have a situation like Nepal. Madam Dovan Rai, are you there? I think there's a problem with the video. Uh, if we will wait for her to get connected. Can I take the same question to our friend Mr. Lakshman Gurung? If you are there, Mr. Lakshman Gurung, can you can you take this question that I asked just now asked uh, Dovan Rai? If you could tell us about your thoughts insofar as the Gen Z is concerned, their expression, their lifestyle, and their involvement with the social media, which makes up a lot of their life.
Thank you for your question, Bidhakji. But I'm not a technical person because so I can't answer or deal with technically. But only I would like to say that whatever happened incident in Nepal these 2 days is really not a fruitful things, fruitful matters. Anyone in the society can't bear it. In my perception, the rebellion or movement leading by the Gen Z community or youth community is rooted to structural system, I think, structural crisis. I would like to mention it in 2 ways. One thing is connected to local practice, local political situation, political systems, leaders' behavior, and those things, whatever happening and influencing or affecting to the youth is based on the political nature. One thing. Another things, because of connection with the digital society, I'd like to say digital society of youth, definitely they are receiving many things, learning many things, getting many experiences. These experiences and learning are giving them or providing them or educating them in beyond the borders of own national context. It means they are already connected to old society, global society. Means they have already developed different perspective than old or old trend-based political perception, old trend-based culture, society. This difference definitely youth are motivating or youth have developing or constructing their own perception than the old I mean the old people or old generation. This is
And
the gap.
if I could just ask, sorry, this perception that you talk about here, that the youth are developing their own perception, what are these perceptions? What can you elaborate? What are these perceptions? And do you think the perceptions are very different from the perceptions that the old and let's say people like us really believe in or think or sort of work on?
Yes, I was coming to the point, but
Right.
okay.
Please.
Perception means perception is connected to economic, social, cultural, personal behavioral, and its interaction with the society. And all those things should drive by the one national standard or national governancing system. Yes. Then one perception is that from the youth side. Then next one is our politics or our political system and our leaders are not going to accept that perceptions, whatever have been developing within the youth community.
But why? But why?
Yes, yes, I'm coming. I'm coming. That development and perception, because in fact, we should not hide. We should not make a illusionary that, especially old political parties and their leaders, really not ready to suppose new generation, new ideology, ideology means not only based on political or economic.
But does it
Because
threaten their existence? Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm interrupting you because I'm trying to understand. And if you could quickly tell us, these ideologies, these perceptions, these have all come from, and we belong to the same society. I think it's the same political culture, it's the same political society. So, how does it threaten their existence or their very survival that they have to react the way they did on the 8th of September when live ammunitions were literally hurled on the students that were protesting and they were all unarmed, at least on day one?
Vidayakji, right now I cannot detail or short what is the gist things hidden inside of that revolt or movement done by the youth. I can't short out or I can't detail out, but
Right,
only one
fair
thing
enough.
I
Fair
can
enough.
say. I can say that definitely there are difference or gap between ideology among old and new generation.
These are also interconnected. I will come back to this. You've said perception, you've said ideology, you've talked about a gap.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
that these are very important observation. I just want to quickly here bring in our friend Aditya Thapa, because he sort of is a person I think who can walk us through this very, the very essence of why ideological gaps exist in different societies and how they expand over time. And we come to a situation like the one we saw in Kathmandu on the 8th and 9th. Aditya, if you could kindly uh, take us through this situation that unfolded in Nepal and what our friend Lakshman Gurung has just mentioned, insofar as gaps are concerned in a political society, in a political culture, and the gap has widened so much that today the Gen Zs are almost seen as a threat to the very existence of the political culture or the political system or the structure, the system that exists in place. If you could kindly share your thought on that first.
Thank you, sir, for the time. And I think these are exceptional times for Nepal, and I was there in Nepal in mid-August this year, and it is really sad to see what has transpired, particularly on the 9th, particularly of the burning of the different institutions of Nepal, and the arson and all that. Sir, I think the Nepalese the political class, like I think Lakshmanji has also hinted at that, that there's this huge gap that has existed for some time. If you look at the leadership of Nepal for some time, the Deobas, the Olis, the Pradhan, they've been in power for quite some time now. And if you look at the kind of politics that they were involved in, and it was simply the prime minister's chair was simply a musical chair, that was going around between these three people, I don't know, consciously, unconsciously. Whether that be Congress, whether that be UML or even Maowadi, I think they have not really developed the second rung of leaders, that could, take over from the leadership that exists today. So that one major fault is that even political parties have not given any hint or sign that, there are new, even if not Gen Zs, but millennial leadership, that could replace the existing, political class in Nepal in the future. So I think the Gen Zs, not only Gen Zs, but the general Nepali public is also concerned about, how long these leaders would stay in power, and with all the corruption cases that has come up over the years in Nepal, the different cases that involving different leaders, particularly right at the top. I particularly observing Nepal, even from outside Nepal, we could never see a kind of a hope in the political leadership in Nepal. I think that has been a major, kind of a factor, because even the general public has not really, really seen a ray of hope of the next rung of leaders that would lead Nepal, because the older leaders really didn't build any, second rung leaders who could take that.
But sir, if I could, I am just sorry, just sorry to stop you there. But do you, what you mentioned is so important, and I think I just want to build a connect. But do you think this void that you're literally hinting at, do you think this void was somewhere responsible for what really also happened in the last 2 days?
Yeah, I think so, because if you look at even the second round Congress leadership like Gagan Thapa and these groups, even within the UML, if you see the second round leadership, they've really been trained. They've really been under the guidance of Prime Minister Oli and the other leadership, and they are largely, I would say, supporters of Prime Minister Oli all this while. So I think the general public also kind of felt that second round leader बड़ा पनि केही आशा छैन के माने नेपालमा त्यो leadershipको crisis चाहिँ was quite deep. I feel not only with Oli but also the future leaders that would take responsibility for Nepal. And looking at Nepal from outside, even I felt very sad with what was happening politically in Nepal because situation in Darjeeling is also very similar. And I usually tell that Nepali le चाहिँ राजनीति गर्नु जान्दैन भनेर I usually tell my friends and family. And we can see that quite literally in Nepal, in Darjeeling, in Sikkim, where we have a Nepali political class, usually, just destroying every other opportunity that they could have to build their society, their nations. And I think Nepal is quite sad. It's a beautiful country, it has great potential. And we're very close to Nepal family members living there even now. Yeah, and it's really sad what happened in Nepal yesterday and the day before yesterday.
Yeah. No, I was just going to ask you, from what all that you're saying, there is this sense of alienation amongst the Gen Z, this sense of alienation. Because if you talk about nepotism, if you talk about corruption, and I've seen videos and memes and all of this of how children of the ruling elite and the rich are enjoying lavish lifestyles elsewhere, all these have built up. So this sense of alienation is also part of the political culture.
Right. And I think if you look at the number of Nepalese leaving Nepal, particularly every day, I believe, I don't have the numbers now, but this about 40% of the Nepalese youth, have left Nepal, and that is one sign where we can understand that they feel politically alienated. They don't see an opportunity, even politically, economically, to stay in Nepal, and that has also led to a lot of out migration in Nepal. So that, in a way, can be seen, as a way of political alienation that has remained in Nepal for some time.
Dhawan Rai has just come back. We had lost you in that you're a computer scientist. And again, the glitch, you see, we all understand all of this. The question that we are asking, and the question that I want to ask you, looking at how social media ban really was the trigger, and that is the lifeline, literally, of the Gen Z, not the Gen Zs, all of us, but then the Gen Z uses the social media that much more. I would like to ask you two things. One is, do you think the ban really was the trigger, or that there was already a movement in place which would have unfolded, ban or no ban? And number two, what happened between the 8th and the 9th? Why there was this complete contrast between the 2 days, and what really went wrong?
Okay, thank you, Vidak. Again, I'm sorry for my glitch. Answering your first question, right? So was that a trigger, or was there something existing, right? And actually, yes, there was already this sense of frustration, hopelessness, and alienation, and especially the Gen Z people who are in their early 20s, because they see a lot of their, friends going abroad, and the people who are here, who are back in Nepal, they feel kind of left over. Either they are kind of trying to migrate for work or studies, or they feel kind of a little, left behind. So there's this sense of kind of helplessness was already there. And then, of course, all the dissatisfaction towards the rampant corruption and dysfunction of our political system. And also the new political parties and new political opportunities, opportunists, they definitely kind of sensationalized the current crisis, right, in a very apolitical, sensationalized way, so that they could kind of trigger, the people. So I think they were already in a very triggered place, and I think they are also part of this global Gen Z community, right, who are feeling this kind of this dread and helplessness and all the economic uncertainties, environmental. I think that underlying angst is already there. And of course, the social media ban was the additional trigger because they feel like the government is not giving them anything. They are not delivering anything, and whatever they kind of created on their own, right? The government is taking away. So the anger that is very like a it is very understandable. So that is the thing, right? And you to answer your other question, the eighth and the ninth, the first and second day. Again, I'm also speculating like most of the people, right? So I am not like because I'm in my early 40s, so I don't know the actually what's going in the social media communications happening in the Gen Z community. But whatever information I have gathered and speculated the development, like it is very shocking. Like our other panelists mentioned before, like in Nepal, we have been through a lot of movements, and we know that because everything is the temperature of the whole world is like amping up, right, with all the geopolitical changes, AI and uncertainty and everything. But even so, right, even factoring that, this kind of escalation is so unprecedented, even if you factor out all the additional things. One is the way the Nepali security system acted on the first day, that very the kind of cruelty and the carnage and the senseless killing. It doesn't make sense, right? So it really kind of everything, we were like really shocked and stunned, the first day. And I think the government kind of delayed in kind of like de-escalating the situation, even though the minister
Do you
resigned.
think,
But
sorry, the government delayed, or the government was so arrogant that they thought that no, because Mr. Oli did not resign the first day and he said infiltrators had got into the protest?
right, yeah. Again, yeah, it was the I don't know, this unsurmountable arrogance of Oli, and the kind of tone, this tone deafness, and some kind of this living in this kind of alternate reality, right? They don't even see what is happening. So it was all that. And the resignation of the PM came very late, right? The next day, and I think that even though it started as the Gen Z movement, but then a lot of other, opportunist forces, including monarchies, and also like Hindutva elements, and all this kind of like infiltration definitely did happen, which does not condone the police brutality. But I think that in the second day, it looks like more than the Gen Z themselves, it was a lot of these other external forces, right?
But the Gen Z, sorry,
And
just in, I mean, I don't want to stop you, but the Gen Zs were also around. So we must also be aware of the fact that the Gen Zs who started the protest on the 8th, they continued to be there on the streets on the 9th. They cannot be also absolved of their responsibility for what happened on the 9th. No matter, infiltrators must have gotten in. There were vested interests. They tried to make use of the situation. But then, somebody yesterday in a panel mentioned this word, and I really liked it, that there was method in the madness, that there were
yes,
targeted attacks on people. So on
yes,
the 9th, which was yesterday, I think what we really saw was not what we were expecting. After the 8th of people, everybody sympathized. I mean, there were tears in my eyes when I was reading a story written by Akhilesh about the whole situation on the 8th. And minutes after that, when I started to get calls from my friends in Nepal and going through the social media and seeing these things happen, where whatever these are seasoned politicians. I'm not saying if there are, I mean, you may have, corruption is there in every society. There's political culture, there's violence in Nepal, in Nepal's political culture, and it is nothing new. We've had it since the time of the Rajas. There's been political violence and through and through. So this is nothing new. But then to the scale that things were taken yesterday, I think was unprecedented for a lot of people that are still supporting the movement, supporting the Gen Zs. Would you agree with me?
Yes, and to add to that, right, as you rightly mentioned, our political culture, and in a lot our political discourse and the political rhetoric that has been hijacked by a lot of violent imaginations. and not only the major political parties, but also the new political parties. And the mayor of Kathmandu, he had openly kind of threatened to burn the Singha Darbar, right? And also
Oh, did
the
he?
new like
Okay.
political part. Yes, yes, yeah. He had threatened that a year back. He had put this like a Facebook status, right? Oh, why did you stop my vehicle that was carrying my pregnant wife? I'm going to burn Singha Darbar, right? That is the center of Nepali government. So, this kind of violent rhetoric has been very normalized. And also the new political parties like Rashtropa, they also use like, oh, this media, they should be targeted, these political parties. So the political discourse has been very apolitical, and it has been kind of like hijacked by a lot of like a violent imagination and rhetoric. So it has been very normalized. So I agree that just the regular people, Genji and other people, they have actually, because the before the violence happened in the real, the violence happens in the collective imagination, right? So there was always this kind of like imagination of going and beating up the politicians and the journalists and all that. So that was already there. But then, as you said, there was this method in the madness, and given how precise, the amount of precision there was. So it gives us this space to think that there is some kind of infiltration, and we have yet to see whether it is just infiltration or some kind of orchestration itself, right? Again, I'm not somebody who has connection with those sources, but even as a like regular citizen, when you look at like Nepal's history, and as I said, even factoring for all the new ways in the past 4 5 years the world had changed, even factoring for all that, the kind of violence we saw, that it seems very there's a lot of fear and suspicion around some kind of orchestration.
Okay, so there's a suspicion around some kind of orchestration, and that happens. I think we've seen that in Bangladesh. And Binayak has written a lovely piece. I'll request all of you after this panel discussion is over. Request all of you to read the Borderlands' main story on top, written by Binayak Sundas, which really tells us about this orchestration and what happens after that. We'll come to that, but quickly to just also get a word in from Akhilesh, who's written about it for us. And Akhilesh has seen a lot of movements in Nepal, being a citizen from Nepal and lived in Kathmandu and a journalist at that. Akhilesh, we've seen the Kantipur office burning. That was really hard burning for me, being a journalist. Still am a journalist. Once a journalist, always a journalist, although I don't do mainstream journalism anymore. But seeing the Kantipur office really being burnt was not the best of images that I really wanted to see amongst all the other images. I don't know what you really get by burning a media office. The media is there to report for you. There are good and the bad media today. There are all kinds of media, but you don't go and burn a media house like that to let vent to your anger. That is one. And how would you sum up the situation on the 8th, 9th, and also the army's role throughout these 2 days? And now that the army has really come out and have taken control of the situation, what is your take? Please, if you could kindly tell us briefly, and then we will just do another round of this discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Vidakji, for inviting me to this panel discussion. Your first question was regarding the arson at Kantipur Media House, especially Kantipur Television. Well, Kantipur has been like one of the major media houses, the leading media houses in Nepal. It is one of the leading media houses in Nepal, and it is also like one of the most watched television, one of the most read news. They have the one of the most read newspapers. But so over the years, Kantipur had developed an image of supporting the current system, the current politicians. And which was being very unpopular among the general public. So Kantipur had a stance when there were like demands questioning federalism, Kantipur and Kathmandu Post came up with editorial headline, don't even think about that. I mean,
But do
in
you
a
think the
democracy,
answer to
you
that
can
is
think
to
about
burn?
anything. And questioning
The answer to that is to burn their
no,
offices?
no, no. I'll come to that. I'll come to that. I'll come to that. In a free society where free press should be respected, it was totally uncalled for and condemnable. But I was just going through. I was just taking you to the background, like what happened, and a certain vested interest groups were always against Kantipur. Certain vested interest groups were always against Kantipur, and they were looking in the past, in the royal, in the pro-monarchy protests also, people tried to attack Kantipur, and but the attack was not at this scale. So certain vested interest groups were always looking for an opportunity to attack Kantipur. So, and finally, when the police, they kind of surrendered after earning a bad name on Monday because of the killings of students and youths. And when the police surrendered, it was an open invite for some, antisocial elements. It gave them a free way. They just ran into wherever they wanted and just did whatever they want to do. So, and the second question is, yes, on Monday, September 8th, the police brutality was largely responsible for what happened on Tuesday, the following day. What started well, very well, what started very well, I am very sad to say, ended very sadly and very badly. So Monday gave us hope, but Tuesday was hopeless. What
But
we
see,
saw on Tuesday.
Akhilesh, I just want to ask you this. See, I totally understand. It is very now, I'm
Mhm,
not saying easy or difficult, but I think plain and simple. We know what has happened. We'll say, okay, what has happened on Tuesday, we all know, and what has happened on Monday, we all know, and what has happened the next day, these
mhm.
things will be talked about, right? But then
Right.
we all know that the protesters who are
Mhm,
on the ground,
mhm,
they are Gen Z, all right, and they are
mhm,
also people that are well informed of what they were going to do and what they could
mhm,
anticipate in return, right? And after that, what could
right.
happen? Do you think, again, I ask you, and as a journalist, you tell me, do you think that protest of that magnitude, it was not a small protest, if even from day one, and the
Mhm,
scale just
mhm,
just just grew, and do you think,
mhm,
therefore, that they would be not aware of the fact that if their protest could be, I mean, their protest could be derailed, uh, because there are also other elements, and the political culture in Nepal, from its history, has shown that there have been lots of different elements that have always tried to take advantage, and not just Nepal, in any other political culture, this is the situation.
mhm. Yeah, yeah. The thing is, the Gen Z planned their protests very peacefully, and they did not have any idea that certain elements could take advantage of the situation. I don't think they were aware of like what unfolded in front of our eyes on Tuesday. But yes, the protest, I was there at Maitigar when the protest started. I was there at around noon. And so the demonstration was very peaceful. Suddenly they started marching towards Baneswar. And surprisingly, the administration, in my opinion, took them very lightly, took the protest very lightly. Even the Prime Minister on the eve of the protest was saying, "केटा भुरा भुरीलाई कानुन त थाहा होला नि." The prime minister made this statement. He was so, I mean, like the prime minister who is known for lampooning others, lampooning his opposition or the opposition, anyone he doesn't like. He even underestimated the administration, also underestimated the protest. No
Akhilesh,
barricades
sorry,
were placed.
I'll just stop you there. We understand these things we've seen, but I mean, we'll just come back to this. I would like to ask you this one question here, and sorry for stopping you because we have to also keep a tab on the time. I just want to ask you this question and quickly take it over to Ramji also to please fill in on this question, the question that I'm asking Akhilesh, and I will take it round to the toss it around to the others, but probably we'll have a different context to how we see how this the depending on the answers that we get from Akhilesh and Ramji is, you mentioned, Akhilesh, that the Gen Zs were not aware of people that could infiltrate. You mentioned this, that the Gen Zs were really not. I mean, therefore, what you're saying and the impression I get is that you can't blame them. Nobody is blaming them. But what we are saying is the Gen Z protest went in onto the street and tried to take on the government, tried to take on the system. They tried to take on the system and against issues, very serious issues such as corruption, nepotism, and all of that, right? We believe from what we've seen that the movement was leaderless. So today, when the military chief or let's say the governor is inviting people for dialogue, they're looking for representatives. The Gen Zs don't seem to have a representative. So whose names are being floated around? Balendra Shah, the mayor, and the others. I mean, Ravi Lamchan's name is also there, and some others that I really I'm not too familiar with. But therefore, do you think that the Gen Z movement was really leaderless? And if it is leaderless, then where is it heading and where was it heading in the first place?
Yeah, it was a leaderless movement because there were no, but there were a few people were named coordinators of the movement. But in effect, yes, there was no particular leader leading the movement.
And I want to take the same question to Ramji like I've asked. And just to add here, if the situation was a leaderless situation, Ramji, on the ground, do you think it is so easy for the Gen Z or for any movement for that matter? And I am looking at movements starting from the People's Power in the Philippines in the 80s, which actually was formed, according to me, Binay could agree, perhaps the most successful People's Power movement, which took out Ferdinand Marcos from his power, right? I've not seen that kind of a People's Power movement, at least in the region or globally also, I guess. So, do you think it was really a leaderless movement? There were no handlers. I mean, I'm saying handlers in a positive sense, as in people that were really organizing them so that they could gather somewhere and they did not suddenly go to the parliament. I'm sure there was a plan.
I agree. I would say largely to the fact that it was a leaderist movement. I would even not say that it was a movement. I would say that it was a moment that
It was a moment. Okay.
it was a moment. It was yet to become a movement because before Tuesday, let's say Monday, the day before yesterday, there was no small initiatives to gather, organize, storm ideas, and present. That wasn't happening. It was mostly based on the very immediate needs. Of course, it was built on the frustrations about corruptions and nepo kids and all that, but it was yet to become that widespread movement, and hence we didn't have that leader. We had many ideas, but not somebody who actually could, you know, built on all of those ideas and frame it as a movement.
So you'd say this was organic then? Then people really
Yeah,
connected with each other on social media, like somebody mentioned that they were deciding, Pushpa mentioned that they were deciding what dress to wear, how to come out, where to, so it was all very organic, you're saying.
I would say that, especially on the first day, on the 8th, because these kinds of small moments continue happening in certain places like Maitigar Mandal and all. This happen. There are very symbolic kinds of movements happening, uh, but to become something about widespread movement, I think the apparatus is a little bit different. The mechanics are different. What I would like to stress here is actually the fact that on the 8th, there is no state for people. The state was very elitist. It had this very big boast of elite impunity, like Achilles he was mentioning, calling out names and shaming them and all that. And so it still wasn't present for people. Still wasn't also present for people yesterday to
The
protect.
state was not present for people, and I would just like to ask you quickly here, where was the army? Until yesterday,
That's
the
what I'm
army,
asking.
yeah, the state. Of course, the army is part of the state, but also I understand you are talking about the political the leaders and the political class as well. But I'm talking about the army that eventually came out, but they came out, I think, a little too late. after all the damage was done.
Too late, I would say. I mean, as you could see, we were making so many appeals for army to actually step up and at least to be present, especially to prevent the vandalism, right? Because what led Monday wasn't leading Tuesday, I would say more or less. So there, it was more of a mix of multiple factors, frustrations from many sides. So yesterday was again the state not being present because the leaders were taken away,
All right.
also helpless, and the military wasn't doing anything.
Right, got that. So the state was not present and the military wasn't doing
For
anything. I
people,
think
especially, it was not present for people.
people
On
were
its
present for people, and then of course we saw there was whatever. I mean, there was all that little mayhem.
And
Not
just
little. There
if I
was
can add
chaos.
one
Yeah.
sentence, maybe this is just my very small figment of imagination. I would like to sometimes think that the army wanted to prove that they're the ultimate. Sometimes they want to wait and like be seen.
Well, I'll take that question to Aditya Thapa and ask him. Uh, Aditya, what do you think? You think the army wanted to wait because there've been different theories floating around, and the army has been questioned by lots of people inside Nepal, from what are my friends yesterday in their discussions, and also people I know on. Why did the army wait for so long? I mean, on the 8th, when we had a situation, and Nepal, Aditya, we were speaking about it, the political culture of Nepal and the kind of violence it has seen in the past, that I think it would not be wrong to say that the army or the state to anticipate that something would have gone drastically wrong the next day and should have been better prepared.
Yeah, so for me, I think after the first day, after the killing, and in the evening, I think the communication minister came out for a very small brief, a press brief or something like that. And the way he replied to the reporter, when the reporter asked, everyone is saying that moral ground prime minister only should resign, and the minister said, "Bato bada resignation na gera ta hudaina." That kind of a statement, and on the part of the army, I think what I kind of agree with Ram sir here, because I think the position of the army in Nepal is very different. It's very different from the Bangladeshi army, which is or the Pakistani army, which has taken up coup, and I think the army in Nepal is seen in a very different light, the last resort, and I think army has also tried to maintain that image. I think they've had a difficult time in the transition period also because of its earlier position, being closer to the monarchy and not under the parliament. So they've had to go through all these transitions, and I think this time, I think the army thought that it is better to wait and see. Though I think that was a blunder on part of the army, because I think the constitutional processes also didn't work in Nepal. The prime minister resigned. I
Absolutely.
don't
I
know why.
think that's sorry, but I
Yeah.
think Aditya makes a very important point, a very, very important point that we've not heard of till now. I think the others would it'd be good for us to introspect that the constitution process did not work. There've been so
Yeah,
much
after
talk
the
about the constitution in Nepal, the constitution making process. We have spent so much money, effort. I have been there in 2 elections. I've been there after that, observing the making of the constitution. And here we see that the constitution process actually did not work. Please go ahead, Aditya.
Yes, I was also quite shocked in the sense after the prime minister resigned midday. I thought the president would take over, bring about, talk with the army or the police. I don't know. I've heard nothing coming out from the police chief. A small brief statement, press statement. But I was, kind of shocked as to. I thought Nepal was on a free fall yesterday afternoon. It
In a
was
free fall.
yeah, it was just in a free fall, and that was shocking to see. And the constitution, because the politicians been talking about the new constitution for a very long time, and believe they were able to come up with one after a very long discussion and two constituent assembly elections. But when it was needed, I think the constitution really failed for Nepal when it came to who would be
Right.
who would be taking charge in Nepal after Prime Minister resigned.
True.
The chaos and all that.
True.
I found that constitution, it's not only the failure of prime minister only of the army. I think the constitution in that way has also failed to help the
Right.
Nepalese particularly yesterday.
Pushpa, would you agree? Nepal was on a free fall yesterday, and your constitution did not work. The amount of time you would have also spent in your governance work on the Constitution. So what are we, if we look ahead, what does the future look like?
So, I don't know. I was briefly on Discord that is happening with so many people like watching and having discussions. It feels like where is the future? But one thing I would say, a little bit going out of your question, what I can say is the conversation about leadership in Nepal, especially. The Gen Zs who were really frustrated with leadership, and that kind of leadership that has been built after the fall of Rana regime, and then the series of political and other incidents that followed. We can say that we really, as you also mentioned, the type of leadership or the leadership we have been believing on, that was really a kind of frustration that led to this Genji's organ kind of like going for a protest and all. But I can also see that the leadership culture is not, it comes from a kind of culture and a deep history, and I think that has been transferred here. While I know after any of this kind of political events that there is definitely going to be vacuum and all, but when I
There's already
when
a
I hear,
vacuum. There is already a
yeah,
vacuum. We don't have
yeah,
a,
there's
yeah.
already a vacuum, and the thing I'm like listening on the discussion among the Gen Zs is like we really fail to like transfer the culture of leadership to the new generation as well. We as a generation have felt the generation like before us have felt, and we actually went on to, like many of us, or the new generation went on the protest, I think, because of leadership and questioning them. And I think this young people also have not seen or thought about what the leadership looks like, and it is clearly evident in the conversation they are having right now. And we can give them benefit of doubt of like A's or the something like that. And I also wanted to talk about the ideologies. So I have many Gen Z friends who are really smart, really going on to studies and holding the ideologies. By ideology, I don't only mean the political ideology and things like that. They've read a lot. They've been all thinking about a lot. But when it comes to like where we stand in all these ideologies and different thing in our country, in the context of Nepal, they are really in, disconnect with how they can connect this to the context of Nepal and everything like that.
Totally.
So on about the army thing and all, I think there was this survey once done by one organization, which actually asked people, who do you trust as an institution, and the highest percentage was on Nepal Army. So it is Nepal Army, but how Nepal Army plays out is a different game that I don't want to
But
discuss
here, of
here.
course,
But I can
yeah.
see the faith on Nepal Army, which I think this leadership and the old leadership, what we call the old leadership, I think they are really disconnected from what
Yeah. And
people have been thinking.
isn't it a little ironic, because here we are talking about, I think Nepal has been one country that I've been closely associated with from quite some time. Elections, its democracy building, as a journalist covering the Maoist movement, and now I'm connected to Nepal, you know how. So I have been but connected to Nepal in different ways, and the democracy building in Nepal has, I think, gone through a lot. And it is really ironic then, therefore, to even to hear this from you, that a survey says that they have that trust is on the army, that belief is on the army, to sort of, but we understand this is where I think Aditya, when he mentioned, and I think Binayak somewhere mentioned, in terms of where your political parties, your political system is not working. You see, every political system everywhere, there are cadres, there are cadre-based political system, there are political parties that have to be close to the people, not just during elections, but throughout the period of governance. When they come to power, it is political parties that make the government. Anyways, that's a different discussion. I'll just go over to Mr. Ben and bring Binayak to wind this up for us. Binayak, if you could sort of wrap this up for us from whatever we have heard until now, and from what actually you have written. This is very interesting in terms of how you've mentioned uh, France. Yeah, you've mentioned contemporary times Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, right? And we're coming back to this question of leaderless, let's call it a moment. Moments then become movements, right? It always starts off from a moment and they become movements. And there's nothing wrong. We should have movements, I think. Movements that actually want justice. Movements that actually are asking for the government to deliver on the promises that they have made. I think there's nothing wrong with that. But Binayak, to ask you this, that if we have a moment or a movement like this where there are no leaders, do you think a Balendra Shah is an alternative, or do you think it is too early to talk about that in Nepal now and that the army is going to stay for some time? And if I could just also a little addition to that is, what are your thoughts on the role of the army so far?
Yeah. So before I sort of sum it up, let me just congratulate, and I almost clapped when Ramji called it a movement. Yeah, since we're talking about the Gen Z, in their lingo, you'd call it, he just laid it. Yeah, that was an absolutely beautiful term. Ramji, I hope you don't mind if I borrow it someday and while I write. Right? Ani, sir, with your before I go to that, if you just allow me to, I think we are making a small mistake here. In so much as I think we are treating the Gen Zs as a monolithic whole, as if it's a predefined, well-structured group that, they are not.
They're not.
The only thing that brought them together was the fact that the government was led by a baby boomer who did not understand what social media meant to these kids. And he gave them the quintessential other, and that helped everybody come together. And in what Ramji was saying, in what Lakshmanji was saying, in what Pushpaji was saying, when everybody was speaking, I could make out that one day and by the way, one of the things that I think Sir may fail to, I mean, not fail, but I think he did not mention was, I'm actually, my actual Ruchi one is the history of Nepal. Right. So since, if seen from that perspective, when we sort of rework, what happened in the last 2 days, as we did for Jan Andolan, as we did it for the 1950s and so on and so forth, we will understand that this group like Gen Z one, to call this a monolithic Gen Z might be wrong. And that also explains what might happen next, right? Because let's remember, caste, ethnicity, religion, etc. They are still very, very real things, right? You asked me, is Balincha the future? Why Balincha? Why not Halka Sangpan? If you give it to Balincha, what stops people from saying, why didn't you give it to Halka Sangpan? Right? And how quickly does that develop into this question about, are we the neglected people? Right? Is everything just going to be about Kathmandu, about, sorry to say this, but Nachuches? Right? What about Limbu? What about then the question about then you start opening the Pandora's box. So these are the things that I'm thinking we're going to deal with. The army's role so far, I think I would just diverge from what Ramji and Adviti was saying. I think it was just perfect. Not diverge. I think I'm coming closer to what Ramji was saying. I think they planned it perfectly. It was almost brilliant. When the general comes in the night and the father of the house says, "Yeah, I'm a boyo. Yeah, I'm a Gordon." So I think the army's role is going to be crucial, which is now the discussion, right? Because remember,
or if I could just, sorry, I'm again tempted to just stop you there and ask you this question: do you think the army somewhere did not want to present itself as the protector of the corrupt?
Yes. Exactly. They were very careful about, I don't know who was doing the PR of the army, but they were certainly better than the ones who were doing it for the government. Because remember, we don't talk about this, but the Gen Z and to use the word that they legit won the information warfare. The government had no counter narrative. I know it happened very quickly, but sir, you and I both follow how the BJP functions, and if you remember what happened during all the movements, including the one in JNU all those years ago, the government had a counter narrative ready. BJP has a very, very strong social media presence that creates a narrative. Ori did not. He had no, and that again goes back to the structure of the party itself, right? They have alienated. Who's going to do the narrative building for them? The cadres are on the streets, right? So I think the information warfare was absolutely won by the Gen Z, I think, but now the army slowly is taking away because, of course, like Ramji was saying, like everybody is saying, right? And what we are understanding is that this is not an organized whole, right? And there is, as Gandhi would put it, a limit to the stamina of the mob. Now they are all going back home. Now the final organized structure, which is the army, is coming back. What happens in the next few days is going to be fascinating from a Nepali historical point of view. I think, gentlemen, you are there on the ground. I mean, it would be lovely to hear more from you all. But I'm sure you will agree with me if I throw in three things. One, I think the two parties who had the only cadre-based support is now, for the foreseeable future, put on the back foot. It's very difficult for people like Balin and Harka Sangpang to come out because remember they are more personality-based than cadre-based organizations. Right? I don't see them replacing anybody. Which then leaves us. Paras seems to be making a few statements here and there. Does Ganendra have is third time lucky becoming the king for the third time? I'm sure he is already dreaming of it. And then what seems most obvious is it's probably the army is going to play a much bigger role than what we've seen them so far. So that's all that I think I would want to say.
Right. So I think you make some very valid points, and thank you for wrapping it up on that note. I think the army, uh, even if it doesn't want to, for the fact that there is a vacuum, there is a void, I think the army is going to stay there till such time there is the semblance of what I call quote unquote normalcy on the streets of Kathmandu, and people are able to come out and do their daily chores and go to their offices. Children, students are able to go to schools and all of that. So that's normalcy. But yes, you've mentioned something very interesting that the Gen Z should not be seen from the monolithic framework. That's not really the case. And I think in our discussion, sometimes we try to tend to go towards that direction. And I think it is not intentional. Why this happens is again because the way the whole thing unfolds, you see, because it is the social media again which brings them all together. They gather together in one place through the social media, which was banned and which really gave them the power to really go after a system which banned or which literally severed their lifeline. So you see, and then the Gen Z on their own, like we all know, there is no leader. It's everybody getting together, wanting to really come out in their best dresses, wanting to come out and say the right thing in their kind of expression. So all of that, I think, are sometimes are things that tend to put them in that monolithic, sort of a frame, which should not be the case. And insofar as I think, all of us, we all have spoken about in terms of the 2 days, I think in a moment or in a movement, the way things unfold, it is sometimes very unpredictable. We cannot dismiss the fact that there was a mob, and we know how the mob works. We also have seen that there was a method in that madness, and we must therefore accept every different thing that has happened in the last 2 days. But at the same time, like Mr. Ram Tiwari had mentioned at the beginning, that we must not lose sight of the fact that 20 lives, young lives, were lost on day one. And that, for me, also was the trigger for what was to come, and I don't know for what probably is to come in the next few days ahead of us. Thank you so much. I just hope that Nepal, which is a beautiful country, beautiful people, and it has been working for its a democratic order or the democracy building, and like you've mentioned, Aditya, the constitution, There's been a lot of effort that has gone into building the constitution since the 2008 elections, I remember. And it is not easy to really build a constitution where there are diverse sort of aspects in a society. You've talked about caste, you've talked about different things, and they all come together, and everybody is looking for their right. Everybody is looking for a level playing field, which is, of course, not there. And that is, I think, another very good reason for us to have another debate discussing where is the level playing field in Nepal. And I'm sure I'll see you again sometime to discuss more issues that will bring us back to understanding why the 8th and the 9th of September happened in Nepal. Thank you so much, all the speakers. Thank you for your time. We've had a wonderful 1.5 hour of discussion, and we'll try and do justice to all that you've spoken about. Thank you so much.
Thank you too. And
Thank
thank
you.
you all.
Very nice.